Hey gang, Stephen Marshall back again, kylandlordlaw.com. Wanted to give a new update. As expected, the courts opened throughout the state of Kentucky on June the 1st, and both the governor and the Kentucky Supreme Court have updated their orders to allow evictions to go forward as long as they're not based on the failure to pay rent. And for the most part, local courts are complying with those orders throughout the state. They're accepting filings. Personally, I'll be back in court tomorrow, June the 11th. I've got 10 or 12 cases scheduled for hearing in and around Fayette County over the next few days. So things are starting to move again. Want to give you a few reminders on what is currently allowed, and then I'll talk about where things are going to go from here. So currently, your eviction must be based on lease violations, lease expirations, or non-renewals that are not connected to the tenant's failure to pay rent in any way. So, as a reminder, for non-renewals, you can refuse to renew a lease for any reason that is not discriminatory or retaliatory. Okay, that's the general rule. You can now add a third category, and that's you can non-renew a lease for any reason that's not discriminatory, retaliatory, or now based on the failure to pay any amount due, whether it's rent or damages or anything else. I've got a post on my site that talks more in depth about non-renewing leases and tenancies, and I highly recommend that post because it is new information for most people. Most people read that post and are like, I had no idea. I thought you could just non-renew a lease for any reason. So take a look at that post if you haven't seen it already. As I mentioned in my last post, if you're going to file an eviction now, the courts have created a new form that you have to use in addition to your eviction complaint. It's called a verification of compliance form. And I've got that form on my website. It's under the resources page, but I'll link it on the blog post that will contain this video on the site. And that's always a suggestion. If you just watch these videos on YouTube, go to my website, kylandlordlaw.com, and find the blog post, because a lot of times I'll have some links on there that are not contained in the videos. So check that out as well. As far as logistics, most courts are having in-person hearings on their evictions, but either party is eligible to participate via Zoom upon request. So if either the landlord or the tenant is an at-risk person for the coronavirus, they can request to participate remotely in the eviction hearing, and the court will make that happen, typically via Zoom. And the thing to remember is that everything is going to happen more slowly. Okay, filings are going to take longer, hearings are going to take longer, even though there will be fewer cases. Writs and setouts are going to take longer, okay, to schedule and to conduct. So we're all just going to have to be patient with this process, especially at first, as everyone from clerks to judges to law enforcement figure this process out. So we'll have some bugs to work out for sure. Another thing to remember, the CARES Act does not apply to the types of evictions that are allowed right now. Okay, the CARES Act only applies in cases that are based on failure to pay rent, and those are not allowed right now. So if you've got a tenant who's violating the lease or has an expired lease, you don't have to worry about the CARES Act, because the CARES Act only applies to failure to pay rent cases. And then if you're still trying to figure out if your property is covered by the CARES Act, both Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac have searchable databases that you can check. I've put both of those on my website on the home page at the bottom of the page, and I will link them in the blog post that goes along with this video. So check that out. All right, now to the thing that most of you guys really care about, non-payment of rent evictions. As I noted in my last post, there is no stated deadline at the moment on when we can file evictions for non-payment. Okay, I know a lot of you were thinking, perhaps hoping, that you'd be able to file on July the 1st. As of now, that's not a date, okay, that we know we can file. That date came from a prior Supreme Court order that said eviction filings would not be accepted until July the 1st at the earliest. Well, that Supreme Court order has now been amended to allow us to move forward now with eviction filings based on things other than the failure to pay rent, but we don't have a July 1 date for filing non-payment evictions. And the reason is that the governor's order suspending evictions for non-payment still stands. Okay, the governor is the key player in all of this. We're not going to be able to file non-payment evictions until one of two things happen. Either he lifts the state of emergency, or he authorizes evictions based on non-payment to proceed despite the state of emergency. Okay, now, as I noted earlier, we get federal funding based on the state of emergency remaining in place. So I don't think that's going to be lifted anytime soon. So what we're going to have happen is he's going to have to issue a new order that allows us to move forward with non-payment evictions despite the state of emergency remaining in place. Okay, and he is getting some significant pressure to make that happen. Most businesses are open throughout the state of Kentucky. People are starting to get paid again. There's been a lot of money that's been pumped into the state, and so people have money to pay. And so there's no great reason to continue prohibiting non-payment evictions. And I can tell you there's a group within this state that has engaged an attorney and stands ready to file a lawsuit against the governor and some other entities if he does not at least articulate a date on which non-payment evictions can start moving forward. And to his credit, he is responding on that issue. He's asked for more information on what surrounding states are doing on the eviction issue. And what I can tell you is that Ohio seems to be leaving the issue in the hands of local courts, allowing them to accept them if they wish. Indiana is not open yet except for emergency evictions, but they're going to open up completely, even for non-payment of rent on July the 1st. That's Indiana. That's not Kentucky. So that's kind of what some of the other states are doing, and hopefully that'll persuade the governor to get moving and opening up the state of Kentucky as well. Because I can tell you, if he doesn't respond with a reasonable date on which the state's going to open up, there's a good chance that that lawsuit gets filed. And so you can stay tuned for more information on that. And I've had a number of people that have reached out to me that would like to contribute money to that lawsuit. If you're one of those folks, there's going to be a way to do that if that lawsuit gets filed, but we'll talk about that at a later time. And just to be clear, I'm not going to be handling that lawsuit, so I'm not going to be getting that money. But if you're interested in contributing to that, we'll talk about that later. I think I've said this before, but my guess on it all is that he opens things up in late July, early August. I think he'll follow the CARES Act time frame, and the CARES Act expires on July the 25th. So that's what I'm guessing. All right, so that brings up the obvious question: should I give out notices to pay or vacate in June? And there's no clear answer. Okay, I've gotten that question, 500 times over the last week, and there's no clear answer. The governor would probably say no, you shouldn't do that because those notices are part of the eviction process, and that's been suspended. Now, the governor hasn't been clear about that, and I would disagree with him that those notices are part of the eviction process. But anyway, the answer is not clear, and as a practical matter, I've not seen anyone get in any kind of trouble for giving out a notice to pay or vacate at this point. So if you think strategically it'll cause your tenant to pay, I say go for it. If you'd rather take a more cautious approach, you can wait until we have a little more clarity on the date that evictions are going to be opened back up. It's your call on whether to give 7-day notices at this point or not. Now, next topic, rental assistance. The Lexington Fair Housing Council has created a program to help tenants avoid eviction. You've kind of heard me talk about the program in the past. There's a little more clarity on what it is at this point. And part of it is going to involve $1,000 in rental assistance to be paid directly to the landlord for qualifying situations. Okay, what they're looking for is to help tenants that have a realistic chance at staying in their current housing to get this money. Okay, so if you've got a tenant who would be helped, who would potentially be allowed to stay in your unit long term by the payment of $1,000, you need to send them to register for this program. Okay, and I'm going to link the tenant portal to the blog post so that you'll know exactly where to send them. Now, they may have a higher balance owed than $1,000, but if them getting the $1,000 plus whatever they can pay on their own would help them to stay long term, they definitely need to check it out. Okay, and so I'll have a link to that. It may be something that is highly beneficial because it doesn't go to the tenant, it gets paid directly to you as the landlord. Changing gears just briefly, as I told you in my last post, I expected to see pools open up, and the governor did issue an order, or did issue a statement that pools are allowed to open June 29th, and I can tell you there's some potential that he'll even move that date up by a week. Okay, that hasn't happened yet, but it's potential that June 22nd will be the opening date. What you will see in the coming days is some guidelines on how pools are going to have to operate when they open up. So those may be onerous, they may be present real logistical problems. We'll see when they come out, but be looking for those. But June 29th is our later date, June 22nd is our earlier date on opening pools. And then finally, June rent numbers. Nationwide, during the first week of June, nearly 81% of tenants paid their rent. Okay, that is higher just a bit than the first week of April and May of this year. And it's just slightly, it's less than 1% below the numbers for the first week of June 2019. So rent numbers continue to look very good nationwide, and that jives with what I'm hearing on the ground here in Central Kentucky. I've talked to a lot of landlords recently about rent numbers, and by and large, as a whole, the numbers are very good. What's happening is there are, as we predicted and as one would expect, a few people who are milking the system that simply hadn't paid since this whole thing started because they know they can't be kicked out. And those are the ones that are driving everybody crazy. And at this point, since the courts have now been closed for 3 months, those balances are getting really high, and landlords are starting to feel that. So let's hope that the courts are opened up sooner or later to non-payment of rent eviction, so you can get the problem people out. And I hope to have more information for you on in the coming days on those types of filings, but I think that's it for today. If you need anything, as always, feel free to give me a call. Our office lines are back up and running, 859-685-0035, or shoot me an email, smarshall@trippleslaw.com. That's it for today, folks. Have a fantastic rest of your week.